Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Talk of the Town podcast. This is your host, Matt Brown. I hope everyone's having an amazing Tuesday so far. Whatever time you're watching this, just an amazing day. And yeah, let's get right into it today. So today we have Top 10 Tuesday again, but this isn't the NFL since we can't really update the rankings. I don't really look into training camp too much. I'm definitely not going to change rankings unless a lot of players get injured in training camp, which I hope does not happen. Then, I'd have to mix them around and move some guys. But yeah, I can't update the NFL rankings until it starts. So today we are going to be doing college football. But with college football, I'm only doing the top 10 teams. It's hard to rank the players. I think I was debating on doing the top 10 quarterbacks going in, but I think I'm going to save that until the season starts. I'm going to avoid doing receivers and defenses and running backs because that kind of stuff is so hard to rank in college football, because you could have a receiver at Troy, who's putting up way better numbers than someone like Ryan Williams, but the competition isn't nearly there. But Ryan Williams is dominating. He's dominating in Alabama, playing against way better competition. And that's just an example. I think you guys get what I mean. It's hard because a lot of players have better numbers at smaller schools, but it doesn't mean they're better players. Excuse me. Doesn't mean they're better players. It just kind of makes it hard to rank that stuff. I mean, I'll end up going over it. I don't think I'll do a top 10, but I'll go over my top 5 players going into whatever position or whatever week. But I'm mainly going to stick to teams and seeding, just because that's really what everyone focuses on with college football and quarterbacks, but mainly the teams. People are diehard fans of their teams in college. So yeah, let's start off with that. So we'll do 2 more topics after I rank. We'll just kind of brush over them a little bit. I do have 2 I'd like to talk about that I think are interesting. They are about college football. So this is our first actual college football video here on the podcast, which I like, because I like talking about college football. That's about a month away. The NFL's a couple weeks after that. Man, we are headed into a golden era of sports here. So yeah, let's start off with this list. At number 11, we'll do one honorable mention. May get some heat for this. I do have Tennessee. People are high on Tennessee. I think Tennessee stays around the same every single year to me. I had them at number 11. Nico transferring is kind of, I don't know. I think it is overhyped. I think we'll see it at UCLA. I think this year will be a telling sign for us here. I remember there was rumors about him even transferring to Alabama and stuff. I know he wasn't going to go there. I didn't know he'd go to UCLA, but a lot of people have been bashing him for that. So Tennessee now, they have Joey Aguilar for the QB swap. Again, I really don't know how good he is. I guess we'll see. I feel it's hard when you have a quarterback you don't know about. I mean, obviously they know about him, but I don't know much about him coming into the season, to be honest with you. Again, he was at UCLA, him and Nico swap, but I think he had a couple 3,000-yard seasons, which isn't bad, but he's playing in the Mountain West. Competition's harder at playing at Tennessee, so we'll see. Their offensive line at Tennessee as well is pretty new. They have a lot of new guys going into that offensive line, so it's a lot of question marks going into this year for me. Honestly, I could really say that for about the bottom 3 teams I have ranked on my list over here. So, I don't know. Tennessee has a lot of question marks. Do they have the talent to be in the top 10? Absolutely. They could end up finishing higher. Just a lot I don't really know about coming in. Number 10, I have Miami. Miami had Cam Ward broke records in Miami last year, and obviously they don't have Cam Ward. You know what I'd say, though? They have a pretty good replacement. And that's where Tennessee kind of falls for me a little bit, is I don't know how Joey Aguilar is going to be at Tennessee, but I know Carson Beck. Now, while he was surrounded by, massive amounts of talent at Georgia, at the same time, he won with it. I know he didn't have a great season last year when he was playing anyway, but, then he had the arm injury, and Georgia just kind of fell apart around him at that point. The offensive line wasn't even very good at all last year. But Carson Beck is a hell of a replacement to have, especially if you're replacing Cam Ward. He just experienced. I mean, you have to remember, this guy was going to be the number 1 overall pick in the draft last year, which I'm actually going to talk about that later on today's episode. So the other segments I have coming up after the top 10. But I think Miami still has bounds of talent. People are actually kind of slamming on them getting Carson Beck a little bit. And then you have, obviously, the lovers. I'm more on, I like it. Again, I said it's a really good replacement. Coach Cristobal, he doubled down on that offensive line for sure this offseason. They have good weapons. They're solid all around. These teams have a ton of talent. We'll see what happens with these teams. Again, number 9, I have Alabama. Coach Dumore, or however you pronounce his last name. There's like 3 different pronunciations for his last name. People say Jalen Milroe's gone. He was kind of last year. Now they have Ty Simpson. They kind of have a little bit of a quarterback competition. I think Ty Simpson is going to start, but the thing is with Alabama, they're just always going to have really good players. The thing is with Coach DeBauer, I don't even know. I don't know how to say his name. Again, like I said, I've heard 30 different ways to say it. But I remember at the beginning of last season, they were saying, they finally replaced Saban. They found this guy's the next Nick Saban at Alabama. And it came around to really turn around and bite them at the end, because they were not saying that by like week 6 anymore. After I lost to Vanderbilt, it was about wraps at that point. Again, he's a really good coach. I'm not taking anything away from him, but I'm glad the talk slowed down about him replacing Saban. They're like, okay, we found the replacement for Nick Saban now. Alabama's never going to replace Nick Saban, at least in our lifetime, probably. They're always going to have amazing players, really good players, just because the legacy of the program. But they're never going to have that Nick Saban kind of figure again. And again, he's still a really top tier coach, but he's just not that guy. And I have my list and all right here on my phone with my notes, and then it just completely disappeared on it. It's whatever. 8, I have Clemson. Cade Klubnik. I don't know. What Dabo Sweeney down there? They got a weird operation down there in Clemson, man. I don't know. The whole thing with the transfer portal and all. It's odd. I don't know. Clemson's odd. Clemson feels like just an outdate. Like, it feels like they're kind of getting passed by everybody, and it's felt like that for years now. They're still competitive, obviously, and they're always, again, it's like Alabama. No matter who their coach is or what, their legacy they leave behind with just the players they've had in the past, they're always going to have good players. They're always going to have talent. But at the same time, they feels like most of college football has just surpassed Clemson at this point, which it's not a good thing if you're Clemson, but they have a lot of stuff going on down there. 7, I have LSU. Again, I'm not gonna go over like too much, too in detail. Again, I think Garrett Nussmeier is going to be a top 10 pick this year. I think he's going to have a really good year. It's almost debating putting LSU higher. Their wide receiver university, that's their nickname. The receivers they produced throughout the last just years now have been ridiculous. Just between Jamar Chase and Justin Jefferson alone. Now you got Brian Thomas Jr., like the guys they just produced. So they're going to have receiving talent. And they just have talent everywhere. They have hard hitting players. And when they went LSU, they always have they have a pretty good offensive line usually. They did lose Will Campbell. They lost their center. I actually think with the Baltimore. But, they took some hits a little bit. I think Brian Kelly, again, have been chanting him out at LSU for a long time. So, we'll see what happens with that. I think LSU just has mounds of talent. They'll be good. Notre Dame at 6, losing Riley Leonard. They have good, hard coaching. Again, Notre Dame always just has good players. People kind of count out Notre Dame sometimes. Like sometimes when I talk to my friends about Notre Dame, people talk about Notre Dame, but Notre Dame's not talked about like the Alabamas and stuff, which I get. Actually, I'm not going to use Alabama as an example because probably shouldn't be. A lot of teams shouldn't. I guess to say like the Penn States and stuff like that, they really aren't talked about enough. Like 5, I had Penn State, Drew Aller coming into this year. This is his last year for he heads into the draft. I know they lost Tyler Warren, which kind of sucks for their offense, but they're always good, but just can't win the championship. They just can't do it. I really thought last year was the year Penn State was going to win the championship. I actually had money on them winning, and they didn't. So of course I lost money, and then everyone's because I live right near or there's a lot of Penn State fans here as well. We live pretty close to Penn State, so a lot of people were disappointed. They're disappointed every single year. Penn State kind of never fails to let their fans down, unfortunately. Before I have Oregon, again, Oregon's just always good. And I don't even know who their quarterback is going into this year. I was just talking about him the other day, and I forget his name. 3, I have Georgia. Again, 4, 3, 2, and 1. I feel like you can swap here. 3, I have Georgia. They have Gunnar Stockton starting at quarterback. Kirby Smart is, Kirby Smart. He's going to make things happen. Their offensive line was not good at all last year, which worries me. I think they did pick up some guys this year, though, which is good. Georgia, I think, is going to be competing for a championship. I think people are kind of counting them out a little bit. They're not counting them out because, people still have them high, but number 1 is like the overwhelming favorite, I feel like. Because 2, I have Ohio State. Again, always competitive. They lost Will Howard. They always seem to find a way to find a good replacement for their quarterbacks. Excuse me. So again, Ohio State just is always a top tier team. Whatever quarterback they roll out this year, I'm sure will be good. They went from Fields to Stroud to and the receivers, they always have Olave. Like they have guys that are just top tier always. So when you think Ohio State's gonna fall off a little bit, oh well, they lost their quarterback, they lost CJ Stroud, they just always find someone else. They were just the national champions last year, so gotta give them credit where it's due. Ryan Day sure as hell saved his job last year, which I don't think he necessarily should have been playing for his job, but that's a conversation for another day. And number 1, I have Texas. Again, Arch Manning. The whole operation they got going on down there, like Texas has the opportunity to kind of make a dynasty, a little run here, at least win 2 championships in the next 3 years or so, which is definitely a good thing in college football or any sport. But again, I kind of just flash by these teams in the top 10 just because college football, you kind of already have a feel for who's going to be good anyway. Like, you'll end up having one of those teams from, the Mountain West or something that will make the playoffs. That isn't on here. That's what's so fun about college football is you always have that element of surprise. But again, you can't really talk about it much, but before the season starts because it's just always changing. Like something happens. A player you don't realize is going to break out. Like with the NFL, that happens there, but it's usually for the most part pretty predictable who's going to be good and who's not going to be good. It's just when the playoffs come. But throughout the whole season of college football, who's going to be good and who's not going to be good. So, again, I kind of just fast fired through those teams there. I think most people will agree with my list. I think Tennessee, more people would probably put them in the top 10 and lead maybe Miami out, Clemson out maybe, but, we'll see. And my next topic I have Can Carson Beck revive his career status and his draft stock at Miami? This is what I was talking about earlier when I was ranking my top 10 list for college football. You know, I think he absolutely could. I'm actually a Carson Beck believer a little bit. I think definitely his supporting cast in Georgia helped him get, that number one overall pick consensus last year, even though he didn't end up making that, especially the arm injury. And then obviously now he's at Miami. If you watched him, he just was a good quarterback. Like, I think regardless of whatever team he plays for, he'd just be good. Especially because he's very experienced at this point. I think he can absolutely revive his draft stock. Now, do I think he could revive it to be the number one overall pick again? No. Like, there was already talks about whether he should be the number one overall pick in a really weak quarterback draft class, which was this year, that just went by. I don't think, especially if I think Nussmeier is going to have a great year. Obviously, Arch Manning, if he decides to come out after this year, which we still have absolutely no idea. I don't think he'd get the number one pick over those guys, but teams are desperate to get the quarterback. Like, Jackson Dart went in the first round this year. And, I can name off some other years. I forget what name was I thinking of from a couple of years ago. I don't know. If it comes back on my head, I'll make sure to say it. But you can just find in pretty much any draft, any quarterback that's overdrafted. They just do. They always do. Quinn Ewers, he went in the 6th round this year. He was talked about as a first-round pick the year before that with Caleb Williams and Jade Daniels. If he would have went, he would have went the first round. There's no doubt about it. With all the way the quarterbacks went, Williams, Daniels, Drake May, Penix, J.J. McCarthy, Bo Nix, they all went pretty much instantly. They were all gone. There was 6 quarterbacks going in the first 15 picks, 12 picks, I think. It was ridiculous. Quinn Ewers would have absolutely have went, especially because I think the Raiders drafted Brock Bowers with that pick. If Quinn Ewers was there, I'm certain the Raiders would have taken Quinn Ewers. But that's just an example. So Carson Beck will absolutely, if he has a good year at Miami, because this is his last year no matter what in college football, and he's going to get drafted, whether he's undrafted like his peer Stetson Bennett, although his situation's a lot different. His career is either going to end up with that to me. He's a guy who'll probably just go in the 6th round, be a backup. He'll have some flashes at camp, and then he'll kind of just fade out from the mix. Or I think he'll actually legitimately get a shot with a team somewhere. Again, I think Las Vegas, I know they signed Geno Smith to like a little deal. I think they'll be looking for a quarterback, especially if Geno doesn't have a good year. I think the fans are going to be chanting for a quarterback. And wherever the Raiders are drafting, Carson Beck will be there. Unless, obviously, he goes to just win off the Heisman or something. And he's literally like a number one pick consensus. Which I don't think he's going to be that. I don't think he's going to be that good. But I think he'll be good. So I do think Carson Beck could revive his draft stock and his career a little bit, to be honest with you. I think that's one thing people are kind of sleeping on, is they kind of just forgot about him. Especially in Miami. That's why I had Miami at number 10 on my list. I really think Miami's going to be competitive this year, especially with him a quarterback still. Just because they lost Cam Ward does not mean they're not going to be good. So they found a great replacement for him. So, we'll see. I had them getting drafted in the 2nd round next year. But if he ends up having a really good year, Arch doesn't come out, Nussmeier might end up flopping. And, who knows? And then you have some other guys coming out this year that are projected, to be in the 1st round. But, those are like the main 2 that are being talked about. That's why I'm mainly talking about them. Nussmeier and Manning. But, we'll see. He might end up reaching himself back in the 1st round. That's where I had him. Like, I had him getting drafted in the 2nd round, but he could end up climbing back into the 2nd round. Or in the 1st round, excuse me. On my last topic today, this is about Arch Manning. Will Arch Manning be the number one pick in the 2026 draft? I like doing a lot of like future predictions. Like, I don't know. I love doing that. To me, that's like one of the funnest things to talk about, that and rankings. Like, I have fun talking about anything, but people love talking about the draft, especially when their team isn't very good. And, they don't really have a quarterback. They're like, okay, who's going to be coming out next year's draft? All of a sudden, you're focused so hard on college football. Who's the good quarterbacks? Who's going to be first in the draft next year? Who might be there when we're drafting? So that's why I have some situations for Arch Manning. And I talked about this the other day when Justin Fields went down with that toe injury. If the Jets were to pick number one, I don't think Arch Manning would come out of the draft. I think he'd stay in Texas another year. You had the whole situation with Eli Manning, years ago with the Chargers. He didn't end up going. And his dad had a say in that. He had a real say in that. So, I can't necessarily blame him if someone on the Jets, like the Jets are just a bad organization, were to be there number one. I don't think Arch would come out. And I think we'll be looking at this draft very differently. I'm trying to think of another bad team that's going to be drafted. Like New Orleans, I think if New Orleans is there, he's going to go to New Orleans. I legitimately think he's going to come out of college football to go to the draft. If New Orleans is there, if the Jets are there, what I seriously have as a sleeper number one overall pick, especially if he gets injured, is Miami. I had them ranked as being 7 and 10 because I was doing that without any injuries, like teams just playing, near their best. I had Miami at 7 and 10, 8, 9-ish. If Tua gets hurt and Tyreek is gone and they fire Mike McDaniel mid-season, I legitimately think Miami might have a chance to get Arch Manning. Because they're not going to, I know they have Tua on a long deal. If he's there, there's no doubt in my mind Miami is going to take another quarterback. Because Tua's just been injured 40, like what feels like 50 times. And isn't his fault? No. When he's just a fragile body out there on the field, like it happens. You can name countless players who are just injury prone in this league. It happens. But, I don't know. I think he's going to have such a good year at Texas. I had them ranked at number one on my list just a few minutes ago. They have such good talent around them, and I think Arch is the kind of player to where he doesn't play to that talent. He makes the talent better. Like, you've seen him when he just came in for those few plays when Ewers would get hurt, or they just put him in for a couple of minutes and they were up by 100. He just go in there and it looked like again, people said, why isn't Arch starting? Even last year, I said Arch shouldn't have been playing last year. I think they would have won the national championship if he was playing, to be completely honest with you. I think he's been ready since he was a freshman. To be completely honest with you, I think he could have stepped in as a freshman and played. Now, was Ewers probably better when he was a freshman? Yeah, I'd say so. Like, Ewers was good, but I don't know. I think a lot of that, again, it's just going to come later on in the season. We'll talk about it more when we'll see who's going to be drafted number one, some of the worst teams in the league. But I think Miami could be a sleeper for the number one overall pick. But Arch, to me, has that talent to be the number one overall pick. And just the Manning name, Eli and Peyton already, he has the family legacy. He has everything going for him. He's on a great team. Honestly, people call him well-mannered. He's very, very patient. Sat there at Texas, didn't say a word, waited for his time to come. Ownership, any team's ownership would kill to have that on our team. So, he has all the right tools. And I think he absolutely will be, whether it's next year or the year after that. It's going to happen. The only time it would happen is if he gets a career-ending injury or he just keeps getting injured and teams are worried about that. Then we may have a different discussion. But as of now, I think Arch will be number one coming into the draft in 2026. But a lot of that is situation based. So we'll see. So that is the podcast for today, 25 minutes long. Again, I maybe could have went a little more in depth on the college football list a little bit, 10-1. It could have explained them maybe a little more, but it's hard. Like, it's not that it's hard, but it is hard kind of predicting what's going to happen with these teams and who's playing where, who's playing what, especially when it's just constant turnover in college football. That's what college football is. It's literally constant turnover. But for the most part, you just understand the rankings, and that's really kind of what I wanted to do. With that is just put the teams where they're at, give you guys my basic idea for their rankings, and, we'll update them throughout the college football season. So that's the video for today. I hope you guys enjoyed the second Top 10 Tuesday. Again, we'll be updating this every Tuesday during the NFL season and college football season. These rankings will constantly be updated, so stay tuned for that. Again, I know we're kind of in a dry spell for sports right now. I'm fully aware, but we're about to hit the golden age of sports. I'm telling you, we're almost there. College football in a month, the NFL in a month and a half, basketball starting up soon. It's going to be a very interesting season for the NBA as well. So, we'll see. So, again, I'll see you guys tomorrow on the podcast. Why not Wednesdays tomorrow? I have a ton of DMs with questions, so thank you guys for that. So I'll be answering you guys with questions tomorrow. If you have any more questions that you would like to do for Why Not Wednesday, you'd like me to answer right here on the podcast, make sure to fire them in today or very early in the morning tomorrow so I can answer and be ready for when I do this. Again, thank you guys so much for your support and watching my videos. Make sure to like, comment, and subscribe to this channel. Post daily here, and I will see you guys on the next one.